and welcome to Playwright, a podcast about creating and sharing new ways to play. My name is Ryan Heyman. You can call me H.
And I'm Ryan Quintel. You can call me Q.
I don't know if you've seen this, but going on right now, as of the time of recording, it'll be a couple weeks old as of the time anyone's listening to this, is the GMT Jam, the Game Maker's Toolkit Jam, hosted by Mark Brown on his channel. And right now, he said, at least during the stream, he played a bunch of games that were submitted today. He said during the stream that it's currently the second biggest game jam in the world, right behind the Global Game Jam, which is pretty cool. And I think this game jam in particular has a lot of really creative ideas. This year's theme is like loss of control, or you're out of control, or something like that, where basically it's challenging designers to create games that takes control away from players over, something they would normally have control over. And today he just posted a stream of him playing through and kind of narrating his thoughts on several of the games, seemingly kind of at random, that have been submitted for the jam. And there's some really neat stuff in there, some really exciting ideas. Just wanted to highlight one in particular. It's like a space shoot 'em up, kind of like a top-down twin stick type of game, where you play as a square ship that can kind of freely rotate and fly around the screen. There's enemies coming at you, but each corner of your ship is a gun, essentially, that can randomly fire off kind of in the direction of that corner. It'll light up before it fires, but you don't have direct control over which gun fires or when it fires. You'll get the warning that it's about to, and then it'll just fire away. So basically what you have to do is navigate around all of these enemies and make sure that your ship is, pointing in the right direction as one of its four guns fires at the enemies. And every time you get hit, you lose one of your guns, which kind of makes it easier, which is cool, actually. It's a nice kind of like way to take it easier on people as they're getting more and more desperate, perhaps. But you really start to feel when you lose the front guns, the ones that, it's easier to kind of adjust your mental rotation of the object to shoot in a direction versus the ones that are firing behind you, essentially. And those can be kind of difficult to wrap your mind around on the fly. So cool game, lots of cool games being submitted.
That's interesting. You're right. I didn't even consider that. Like, really, when you change the shooting position to anything other than really kind of directly forward or directly behind, especially in a vehicle-based game, it's almost really tough to wrap your mind around.
There's a game I played, and this is a little bit of a blast from the past. I've been actually going through quite a few of these like arcade collections recently, just because I'm on Cane and Rinse. Like, there's older people on the team, and they're talking about like the classic arcade games all the time.
Older? What the heck?
Yeah, I'm kind of ashamed every time it comes up because I'm like, I don't know if I've actually played Galaga. I know that I should have.
Right.
But I don't know if I actually have sat down and actually played Galaga. And so I've been revisiting all of these great, like the SNK 30th Anniversary Edition arcade collection. I've been playing the Atari arcade. I don't remember what it's called, but some really great kind of collections of older games. And I was playing through Life Force, which was known as Salamander in certain regions, and that's a kind of side-on shoot 'em up. But I really love the way that works. Like, you kind of collect power-ups along the way, and they kind of like, the more power-ups you collect, the better and better guns you get, but you don't get those guns until you kind of cash in on the power-ups that you've collected so far. So you could choose, if you get one power-up, you could cash it in and get, whatever bonus was associated with that, like, one level boost. If you choose to cash in after you collect 3 power-ups, then maybe you'll get a different kind of, maybe it's a spread shot at that point, or maybe it's, homing missiles or whatever. But I really like that as well. Like, you are kind of incentivizing people to play for longer with the weaker guns in hopes of getting better weaponry, farther down the road. And then, of course, that all kind of in typical shoot 'em up fashion. It resets whenever you die. So, it could be a lot of time wasted for nothing.
Yeah, I definitely feel, I think gamers in general, here we go now, broad generalization going at you, that like we do that to each other, right? We almost, even if we don't directly shame you, we will inadvertently shame you for not having experienced the history of different video games. And, we are now living in a time where many of the contemporary gamers have not even played something as modern in my mind as Mario 64, right? Mm-hmm. And they would like see that PlayStation 1. They don't have a nostalgia for the PlayStation 1 jank. They just kind of remember, oh yeah, my older brother, my older sister used to play Crash Bandicoot. I guess Crash is like maybe he's a big deal or something. And so seeing franchises try to make a comeback, we were in the Canerans chat, and isn't somebody doing like a remake of, or a new Dig Dug, or there's a new version of one of these old games coming out?
Yeah, I think that was a port of like a PS Vita version or something like that. But yeah, seems to be always kind of new Dig Dugs and Pac-Man and stuff like that coming out.
It's so interesting to think that we're kind of, at least interesting for me to think, hey, we're in this time where no, I didn't try that original, and it has to be easy for people to try that original. So thank goodness for emulators and game preservation.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get to some new video game ideas. Oh. I'm going to be pitching first today. So this was actually inspired by a video that Jacob Geller from the Canon Rinse team has done. And if anyone isn't subscribed to Jacob Geller's YouTube channel, it's consistently tremendous. He does these great, really thoughtful, really intelligent essays about, usually about kind of broader cultural topics as seen through the lens of video games. But recently he did a video about ugly games that are that kind of weaponize an ugly aesthetic. He highlighted both the Kane and Lynch games as well as Max Payne 3. Right? Yeah, and I was really intrigued by Kane and Lynch Dog Days, which I've never played before. I kind of dismissed it, as did seemingly everyone else. But it's, for as kind of gross, mean-spirited, and ugly, in Jacob's words, as the game is, it does seem to have some really interesting ideas, and I kind of wanted to extrapolate on one of them. The game is a third-person shooter, but it is the camera is in the style of kind of like a handheld camera. There is not really an implication that anyone is holding it, but it's, it shakes around. There is kind of digital distortion whenever guns are too close to the camera. They kind of blow out the microphone, or whenever there's large flashes of light that would cause, the camera to kind of glitch out, and things that move too quickly, it has a hard time tracking. And so you get those kind of like standard kind of digital distortion effects, which you're used to seeing, which I think is pretty cool. And, this kind of digital actor that's holding the camera is, loses his balance and will topple over, or will react and kind of, jolt the camera in a direction during cutscenes with something explodes off screen. It's very reactive. It feels, very handheld.
Very gritty.
You don't see a lot of in games. And so it got me thinking of taking it a step forward. And what if we did a third-person shooter where it's essentially an escort quest, but you are escorting the person holding the camera. So don't let the camera POV take damage, but you only directly control the on-screen character. Essentially, I don't know whether we want to keep the camera on rails or whether we want to have some level of control over both characters, but essentially it's kind of like a Resident Evil 4 where you are looking through the eyes of, any escort quest game, but you are the third-person character escorting the first-person character around. So start the clock.
What I love about this, and I think we might even be referencing another Kane Cane and Rinse member. I think it's Carl who does a lot of the photo mode posts on his Twitter.
Yeah, Jay does.
Jay, that's right. It's Jay, right? Yeah, one of the things that I've always all these games increasingly are putting in photo modes, and then you have games that are binarily about taking photos, like the cameras in hand or whatever, but very rarely the can you keep up sort of mechanic of it. There's not a lot of speed and pacing usually in these photography games. There's a lot of, unless it's a Pokemon Snap, right? In which case you're on rails. But I like the idea of having to track the action, but at the same time, learn your way around the camera to do it.
Learn your way around the camera. Do you mean like actually the functions of the... like a DSLR?
Yeah, it's almost like you're the director of photography in a sense, and, can you frame the shot well? Can you emphasize the right stuff? Maybe it's even, can you get the protagonist and a bad guy in frame in the right way, or else they won't. If you can't capture them doing their spin kick, then they won't be able to do it.
Well, it's one of the things I was thinking actually about this idea of this... kind of escorting the main or the first person viewpoint character around, is that one of the things about third person shooters especially, or I think the first time I saw it was Perfect Dark Zero, which was a first person game, which transitioned to third person when you took cover. And so you can kind of look around the corner, and you can even sometimes, align your crosshair on an enemy while your character is, essentially kind of back up against the wall, not even, in no risk of harm. It feels like kind of like a real concession being made to the player there. You're seeing things that your character can't. And so maybe in those situations, you are actually putting the first person character at risk, this escorted character at risk every time your camera can see the enemy. And so maybe there are, opportunities where blind fire might be more vital than it is in most games, because if you can see the enemy, that means that they can shoot you. So, it's about finding cover for both your on-screen character, your third-person shooter character, as well as the escorted first-person character.
I like that mechanic, and I don't know... surprised that I'm going to kind of reference Stanley Kubrick work here, but a camera operator by the name of Garrett Brown invented the Steadicam. And if you guys don't know what the Steadicam is, it's essentially like a big rig that balances your body weight against the weight of a camera in perfect equilibrium, so a camera can move around very, very smoothly. If you go before the 1970s, you never see that in a film, and and this was before a lot of optical image stabilization technology was built. So the Steadicam allowed someone who has this big camera rig literally strapped to their body kind of even run alongside somebody else. And you see it in The Shining when they follow Danny in the tricycle. That's somebody who's literally just kind of jogging behind Danny as he's in that, but you don't get any camera shake. So I almost wonder if this camera simulator, you're playing Death Stranding now, I'm about to jump into it. I wonder if there's some sort of balancing mechanic, or if there's how can you load it and hit this perfect equilibrium to make sure that you're able to provide a smooth, if that's the desired look.
So there's if you even think about one of the films that came out last year, what was it, 1918, or am I getting the wrong?
1917. 1917.
Sorry. That's a sequel. You're not supposed to know about that yet.
Yeah, they reveal the villain in the post-credit scene of this one, so it's you didn't spoil anything.
Yeah, so 1917, a lot of people commented that felt like a video game, and especially coming off of the previous year's God of War game, which did also kind of use this, one shot throughout the entire game motif. It kind of, it kind of demonstrates how this kind of thing could be done in a video game setting. I guess I don't know if I have anything more interesting to say about that.
1917 is an interesting example. I haven't seen it, but I'm going to guess that from everything I understand about it, that it falls very much into the video game trope of you are supposed to be on a very linear, straightforward path, but you're constantly being railroaded and interrupted with things that are going to add more time and complexity to your journey. I feel like that's the story of every Naughty Dog game, is just, I guess we're going to have to find another way around.
Yeah.
And so what does it mean to be a camera operator in this space? And I think that like maybe having the angles or the distance of the camera could potentially affect things like character speed and how big the action is. You pull way out, like they often say comedy is for wide angle lenses. So maybe you're able to change these lenses and somehow that changes the nature of the enemies or something like that.
It would be interesting if, almost like a zoom lens and a sniper scope, you had to change out the lens of the camera that you're using to get, a better view of enemies that are far away. And then there would be kind of like a time in between when things get fuzzy as your point of view character is changing things out.
I'm trying to think about Jacob's sort of ugly games and the shaky camera look. What could we play with shaky camera? In Star Trek, they literally shook the camera to pretend that the ship was shaking. I wonder if shaking the camera here could have that similar effect on the world and create physics like you're shaking the world.
Okay, so would you literally be shaking the world?
That's a good question.
The implication?
Maybe you're literally shaking the world, or maybe you are you're just causing the actors to realize that it's time for them to pretend they're being shook around. Mm-hmm. This is all kind of play space stuff. I feel like we're right on the precipice of understanding how this locks into being a game.
So another thing, think about the Call of Duties where a character, gets hurt and then has to kind of duck behind cover to heal for a little bit. If you have both a point of view character and a third person on screen character, you're kind of managing the health of both of them. Maybe they have different kind of indicators, or it would all be kind of communicated visually on screen, just through the way that either of them are acting. But maybe if your point of view character gets hurt, then, you don't have a choice. You have to duck behind cover to heal up. And maybe the camera, entirely looks away from where you need to shoot. And you have to, still controlling this third person character, try to do your best to remember where enemies were and to aim and shoot without being able to see where you're shooting because the camera is now incapacitated for however long it takes to heal back up.
That's cool. What if you combine that with some mechanic of one of the reasons why things like mirrors and reflections are so hard before things like ray tracing, arguably they're still very hard to do in video games, is because if it's not on camera, it doesn't exist in a video game. It's like as you're turning the camera, the world is kind of real time loaded in from its cache state or whatever. So maybe you could use this, actually figure out how to communicate to the player that if it's not on screen, it doesn't exist. And you're kind of constantly trying to both keep the player in existence, but rotate the camera such that you're actually like eliminating enemies by the fact that they don't actually end up existing in the space anymore.
Let's go ahead and close that one down and come up with a name for it.
Maybe if you deal with some, it doesn't exist when it's not on camera. What do you think of object permanence?
That's good. I was kind of thinking about that when you were describing it. I say that'll work for this game, object permanence. Let's go ahead and move on to your pitch for the day.
Sorry, I'm chuckling. For whatever reason, object permanence : objective permanence stood out in my mind. Okay, so what I'm bringing you today is a new type of take on basketball. So I really love how in the past couple years we've been sort of peppered in with all of these very different takes on golfing as a concept, whether it's dangerous golf or golf peaks or everybody's golf or golf story. Golf has had a lot of play. Maybe it just sets itself up well for this sort of thing, but I am wondering if we can do, maybe it's an NBA game, maybe it isn't, but an NBA basketball game that is about solving these little puzzle boxes of you have different surfaces, different angles, and a hoop located somewhere, but each level you only get a certain amount of dribbles before you actually have to take the shot. So you have to kind of look around, analyze your environment, and say, okay, maybe if I toss it off of this surface, it'll bounce at 45 degrees. I can run and catch it. That's my first dribble. My second is maybe off a backboard or something so I can get to more proper positioning. And then, of course, you could end with a 2-point or a 3-point shot or a slam dunk and have different scoring for those things.
All right, starting the clock. All right, so this is almost... if you're, the way that you describe this almost kind of feels like a turn-based type of game where you're envisioning how to get somewhere else in a certain number of, steps or moves or something, kind of represented by how many times the ball has left your hands. And so, if you take this as kind of like, if you can kind of pause in between each of these, trick shot / parkour segments that you have to do, and kind of envision the course of, both of your body and of where the ball is going to bounce, and kind of, get these little ghostly images in your head. You know how games do that sometimes. I've just been playing some Death Stranding, and there's definitely a lot of
ghostly images
projections onto the world in that one. But that seems like an interesting challenge. And kind of balancing out both the planning and performance as well.
Yeah, I imagine combining, I like what you're saying, and imagine that sort of, I think pool games are good at doing this, of kind of showing you, hey, this is the angle that this thing is going to take when it hits a surface or hits a particular ball, and then as you adjust your cue stick, it kind of adjusts with you. What if you did something like that, but before you cue the sort of ball bounce animation, you have to sort of run to, or as it's bouncing, you have to run to the location it's going to be in order to catch it. So after you kind of cue up an action, you hit, okay, go round 1, it goes to bounce, and you have to make sure that you're in position, facing it properly to catch it. And then, maybe even turning your body around while holding the ball has that same sort of NBA quality of like, okay, you're stuck there now until you pass. But as long as you land in one spot, you can always rotate.
One of the rules in basketball is that once you start dribbling, you can't catch it again with both hands, which kind of puts you can catch it again with both hands, but then you can't start dribbling again after that. Obviously, we don't have to follow basketball rules specifically, but, does that factor into how you're envisioning this? Or, is this more of a trick shot type of, or like a game of horse even, where you're trying to follow like a very specific set of tricks and, do things in a challenging way rather than like following basketball rules 1-to-1.
I do love if you take the sort of Trackmania-esque approach, or the many games that are sort of these little optimization routes based of like, yeah, you could take that path and hit something and complete the level, but there maybe is this more insane bounce and throw that you can pull off that will let you score this in just 2 dribbles or something like that. I even like the idea of incorporating a little bit of what you said of maybe there's little robot players or hologram players on the court that if you can get it to them and then like request a pass, then that almost is like a wild card in a deck of cards of like, okay, I know that if within 2 bounces I can get it to this AI person and then request it be passed back to me. And that's almost a way to make it a little bit more accessible. The puzzle's a little bit easier to handle, but otherwise then you're in the realm of like the Dark Souls-esque run of like, okay, can you do this? You get 1 bounce to get to the net, and then you got to score a 3-pointer in order to hit all like 5 points of the run.
you mentioned in the lead up to this, you were kind of thinking about Dangerous Golf. And one of the things I really like about that game is that it sets each of its kind of golf challenges in unexpected locations. Obviously,
Yeah.
in that game, it kind of specializes in locations where expensive stuff is literal all over the place for you to break mercilessly, which is great. And so, it's so much fun to shatter plates and art and stuff like that. But it made me think like how much fun this would be and how well it would kind of map into the specific type of challenge you're trying to create if we aren't on a basketball court, but rather like in a crowded study or something like that, like a library or something. It's, each of these locations could be different but unexpected. It gives you kind of that Tony Hawk's Pro Skater like appeal of using an everyday space for an exceptional purpose, and helps you kind of recontextualize the world around you. And while you were pitching it, I was kind of thinking if it would be fun if we could find a way to like incorporate like using basketball techniques to like solve murder cases or something like that, like something silly. And it's like, or like a Inspector Shack or something like that.
Wait a minute, a detective game on Playwright? Surely not. Yeah, that's cool. I love the idea of the the unexpected setting. I even, for whatever reason, I like the idea of solving murders with it, or solving any sort of mystery really. But I was thinking about, okay, what if there were these sort of metal, I can't even explain what it is in my mind, but imagine a piece of sheet metal attached to a hinge with a crank, and that maybe there was some way, whether maybe it's in between rounds or something, or these turns that you take, where you can actually go and almost crank these surfaces and it changes the angle of them. Imagine like a Zelda mirror shield puzzle. It's the best thing I can think of, but you're kind of able to angle these surfaces and sort of set things up exactly the way that you want them and then sort of go to town on it. But yeah, I could even see like a Phoenix Wright where you're trying to score baskets in terms of like scoring points in the courtroom and then slam dunking a case.
That's pretty fun. I do think it's very iconic if each of these levels ends with a slam dunk or at least a shot into something, and that is kind of a test of skill as well, whether you can land that shot. I don't know if we even think about like 2-point versus 3-point shots, but that's it's a very Phoenix Wright way to end things, with a big kind of decisive action.
Yeah, and I think what's cool about it too is if you say do a level-based thing where you score points for how many, like there's a par, almost like a golf of like, hey, this should take you 3 bounces. If you can do it less, that's bonus points. And then even if you get yourself into a hairy situation, if you're really good at making a basket, and I love the idea of actually taking it into the first person and doing some first person basketball throwing. That's like a perfect timing thing. It could be really climactic at the end of one of these things.
Let's talk about actually navigating your body through the space as well, because, if you are bouncing the ball, there has to be somebody there, presumably you, to catch it as well. And so even if the ball kind of goes in slow motion, I would like if there's some sort of a executional challenge to navigating the space. As I mentioned, I'm playing Death Stranding, and that game is all about like your body kind of realistically reacting to the crazy terrain that you're trying to traverse. And, sometimes the slope is too steep and you have to, brace yourself or find a kinder slope to walk down instead, or, even lighten your pack and make a couple trips to take everything down the mountain that you're on. But,
you could have just said it's a Strand type game and everyone would have
this could be a Strand type basketball game as well.
That's really cool. I do like the idea too of as you're navigating around the surfaces. So let's say that you kind of have a toss, button where you kind of toss the ball, and that it, almost like Super Hot, you get kind of as you move the ball moves type of control. And so now you're not only trying to kind of go to where the ball is going to be, but depending on the angle, you may try and queue up a jump, for example. Like maybe you yourself can place a foot on one of these angled surfaces and kind of leap up. So the angled surfaces are not just for sort of bouncing off of, or bouncing the ball off of, but kind of leveraging to line yourself up for one of these slam dunks, and you make the slam dunk the sort of penultimate, or the ultimate rather, way to score points, because that way that proves that you were able to not only get the ball in perfect range of the basket, but then dunk the ball after all. And so that's like the double reward.
We're out of time. Let's shut it down. Let's give it a name.
There's Basket Stranding. I'm thinking about Super Hot, and it's been a while since we've put super in a game name, I feel like. What are we doing? We're solving puzzles.
I mean, if it's murder mysteries, we could call it Casket Ball. I feel like I get a different picture in my head when I hear that, but it's kind of funny.
Casket Ball. Is there a play off of some of these other Casket Ball? I'm thinking about like how we've done Everybody's Golf Peaks, like Everybody's Court. I don't know.
Court of Law.
Court of Law, dude. Oh, you may have unlocked it.
It's kind of fun.
Court of Law.
Especially if there was like a courtroom element as well. You have to use basketball.
What about this? We make this slight tweak, and this gives us permission to do more things, I think. Court of Laws. Because that way, it could also be just the laws of physics.
Okay. All right. That's
barely
fine.
Going along with a very generous of you to agree to this.
That's all right with me. Let's move on to the community. We actually have, I think we got one new pitch this week, so keep them coming, people. We appreciate everyone who sends something in. This comes from Maylor Taylor, who says, I've always wanted to see a game made for people in my career, web developers. Hey, I see some games about the industry or making games or something similar, but I want a game where you have to design websites for clients and get rated on it. So I'm going to have to let you lead this one, Q, and we'll go and start the clock here.
The web developer game. I work with a lot of web developers, and I think one thing that's, I guess I'll start by peppering in some things that I know they do. So there's front-end development, which is making things look really nice. There's back-end development, and these are very broad generalizations. I know people are going to correct me. But back-end development is working more on systems and architecture and making sure that the sort of pipes are hooked up correctly. There's also a lot of things in between there. So, but saying that maybe there's data, there's a lot of things. So let's say that there's kind of the broad slices of front end and back end, and some mechanics of this game of hooking things up, making them look good.
Okay. So what does that look like? What does that entail?
I wonder if one part of it is, in my head, I'm thinking about like the BioShock hacking mini games and such, and like how that's literally hooking up the pipes of something, and the internet is definitely a series of tubes. We all agree with that, but I'm wondering if there could be something about like hooking something up and then in real time somehow applying themes or visuals to it in some way.
It would be, modern web development and web design, especially this kind of like templatized stuff is so easy to do now with, you've worked for Squarespace in the past, and there's other, competitors out there that are doing kind of similar things. And it's just, it is as easy as kind of drag and drop these days. And I swear this isn't a commercial. We're still not getting paid for this podcast.
Sponsored by Squarespace.
But there's kind of a game in that, you're dragging blocks of content in and kind of arranging it almost like a Resident Evil inventory. I wonder if there's kind of like a flip side puzzle where you do this kind of like front end design, get all these blocks to fit together, and then the back end design, almost like an old timey phone switchboard. You have to kind of like connect the elements and little colored cues that you have to, and then you can't cross them, or maybe you can only cross certain colors, and so you have to find ways that they all fit together on the front side, and then ways that you can attach them all on the back side as well.
One of the things I like about that sort of approach is you kind of enter into a world where connecting the front end web design and a lot of web development is also about like flows, and it's actually, the industry term is funnels. I'm sure you're familiar with the funnel working in marketing, but the funnel's a big deal. And the funnel, for people that don't know what the funnel is, it's basically saying, hey, people that come to our website, people that come to our product, they go through a series of steps to get to something, and every time there's another step, you kind of lose some amount of people that just say, this is too much, or maybe they get busy, distracted, whatever. What if also, as part of your hooking things up, it's almost like a Baba is you or something, but there's like this very light coding logic that like takes people through different steps and creates these clickable paths for somebody, and then you find out like which one of your steps people go through the most, and that actually mirrors kind of real web development, maybe too much.
It also makes me think of Viva Pinata for some reason, where you leave out, specific elements in your garden, whether it's long grass or trees or flowers, and that attracts certain types of pinatas and discourages others from visiting. And if they like it enough, then they'll stay, and you essentially have their, they're a part of your garden. And so something like this, maybe you're trying almost like a phone number scan, like you'd see on like a police TV show where they're trying to like trace a phone number. Maybe it's, you have to get somebody to click through a certain number of pages or just spend a certain amount of time on your website, so you can kind of like incorporate time wasting elements or, additional steps to get them to stay within the website for a certain amount of time, and then kind of sprinkle in enough like positive reinforcement and incentive throughout that encourages them to keep going. And it'll work on different types of people. But, once they spend enough time on your website, then like your website like devours them or absorbs them into the internet or something like that. Like some sort of a, you get another soul for the collection,
One of the things that's interesting, and this is partially web development, but this is very much UI and design as well, which is we're always at balance of like trying to get someone to go through a series of things for us, maybe buy a thing, but the more you kind of put in front of them, the more they'll sort of back away from you. So I wonder if there's like a retention hacks that you end up unlocking across the way, and you're like, okay, we're going to put a 15% off coupon, and that always ensures, and you can offer these for limited times, and that always ensures that people will make it to the next step. Then that cuts down on like the profit on the other end of it. So you got to figure out how to make that up in some way, whether it's like tweaking a price of a thing or I don't know.
Yeah. So there's a lot of decisions that the web developer gets to make about the structure and kind of flow of the site, but there's also a lot of decisions that are driven by the business. And so maybe you have certain modifiers or things that you have to achieve or things that you can't do that are, set for you. It seems like a pretty reasonable assumption to make. Maybe there's different goals for each level. Like what would be, as somebody who's done web design significantly before, like what would be interesting?
In terms of goals and levels?
Yeah, like what would be interesting objectives for, if this is like a company assigning you tasks, what would be something that you would expect to see and what would translate well into like interesting kind of gameplay modifiers?
What if we, hey, it's 2020, so let's get a little dystopian on this. What if we play as a social network trying to extract as much personal information out of somebody as they can get their grubby mitts on? That'll be too real for some people. But if we do something like that, then really what you're trying to do is not only get someone to spend more time on your site, but you're potentially trying to get them to fill out forms and surveys and places in the experience where you're able to garner pieces of information from them. So I wonder if there's mechanics of like the more personal information fields that you cleverly place in a flow, the more likely a person is to select those or to fill them out and then give you information.
It could be that you have this kind of like a branching tree path that you see all of the. I've been playing also a lot of Mini Motorways, the sequel to Mini Metro, which I really like. And so, seeing all those little cars go on the roads and stuff, you can kind of envision this happening. Kind of similarly, maybe you can have kind of like a flow chart of your website design and watch all these little colored dots kind of go down these different paths. And maybe if you set up a survey or something that can give you a lot of information, that can be something really valuable because it helps you predict the behavior of other dots of that same color. And so, the earlier that you can install it in the flow of the site, the more, you stand to benefit. But having a survey really early on, or having a survey at all, can be a major turnoff to people. It interrupts the flow of what they're doing. And so if you install it too early, you could be kind of scaring away a large portion of your audience as well.
I like that. And then I think the web development angle there is the web developer can actually place detection gates. So the web developer can set up and determine what this funnel actually is, right? It's just traffic coming in, and as the traffic grows in complexity and the paths that it follows. And so you're still maybe trying to drive someone to an end goal, but then, halfway through your business's life, you're like, okay, well, now we have two things that we're going to sell. Okay, now we got to get people maybe equally down one or the other. And then eventually you're like, well, we actually want to sell more of this thing during this period. And so what the web developer is trying to do is not only set up the gates to detect the traffic and write some really basic rules, but you could also make this almost like, you've probably seen examples like this in things like Project Spark, if anybody played Project Spark, but in medium molecule games too, where it's very drag and drop of homepage. That's something that you can kind of just drag into your system, and then traffic starts flowing through the homepage. That's how traffic comes in. Okay, it's coming in. And then you're like, okay, now I'm going to do a shop, and then I'm going to do a product. Okay, now traffic flows through that. And then the web developer can kind of click into any of these pages and set little different basic logic rules that affect the traffic in different ways. And it can be a really simple, either drag and drop or almost like Mad Lib style code interface to do that sort of stuff. And at least give you that feeling of okay, there's what people see and then what I'm really tinkering with.
That's enough time on that one. Let's close it down. Let's give it a name.
Web-rested development.
That's pretty good. Or Web of Deceit.
I do. What if, let's make it a little bit more positive. Web of influence, web of...
That's pretty good too, yeah.
Maybe it's just the spider's web, because you're literally trying to catch flies, right? You're trying to catch traffic.
Yeah, okay. The spider's web, I think that fits into what we're doing.
No, come on. Is that you? You're just being so nice to me today. You've got it. What was your one? I want to pick yours.
Okay.
Web of Deceit?
Web of Deceit. This is so much more menacing. It goes back to when I was pitching that we would be stealing people's souls and such,
Yeah, I think Web of Deceit is good, because then you can write code that sets up Bitcoin mining in the background or something.
And it's been quite a week for Bitcoin as of the time of recording.
Yes, people in the future, remember this week for the Bitcoin and, well, everything else that happens.
Yep, I can't imagine what's going to be going on in the world in 2 weeks' time. I'm probably very sorry that you're experiencing what you are. But anyways.
I know. Isn't that crazy? Ugh.
Anyways, thank you, Mailer Taylor, for sending that in. And if you would like to send in a video game idea of your own, and we strongly encourage you to do so, then please submit that to playwrightcast.com/pitch. You can email us at playwrightcast, or you can tweet us. You can tweet us at playwrightcast. You can email us playwrightcast@gmail.com.
Special thank you to PROTODOME for the use of our theme song, Hello World, off the album Blue Noise. And while you're listening to things, why not go check out all of the great shows on the Cane and Rinse network, like The Sausage Factory, like Sound of Play. And I also hear they do a video game review podcast. The name escapes me.
Yeah. I think it's Cane and Lynch. Thinking back to Jacob's
Dog
video.
Days.
Pretty sure. Sleeping Dog Days. Okay, let's get into a redacted game. I owe you one today, so this is my redacted game. Learn from the past. Many centuries have passed since the War of the Redacted. Civilizations have been rebuilt with iron, machines, and technology, but the forces of Redacted have begun to return. And when an ancient Redacted is discovered, the risk of war resurfaces. Discover the origins of Special Redacted, later developed in the subsequent Redacted, including Redacted mini-quests, the Redacted battle system, and much more. Numerous weapons, items, Redacted, and special skills allow for incredible gameplay, depth, and strategy.
The rule is 3 guesses, right? Because I've got one right out the gate. Horizon Zero Dawn.
No.
All right. I was thinking of the modern past civilization rediscovering technology.
Mm-hmm.
Second, could you give me accolades about this title?
Okay. So this is a bit messy because this is a multi-format game. Looking at one, the accolades aren't going to be helpful. I can give you a Metascore though.
Give me a Metascore.
A user score maybe. I don't know. What would be useful for you?
Let me know how good it is.
Okay. Metascore is a 91. User score is an 8.5.
91 and 8.5. Is this a Japanese developed game?
It is, yes. If you want, I also have a 10 review and a 0 review from users.
Okay, sure. Let's do that too.
Okay. A 10 review says, it's probably not going to be that helpful. Wow, just wow. I rarely rate a game a 10, but this deserves it. This is referring to a re-release. They took a near-perfect game and made it better with intuitive touch controls, extra bosses, and more Redacted.
Oh.
And then a 0 review says, let me just read through this real quick. Okay, yeah, this is fine. No doubt the game is fun, but Redacted ruins it by having blonde characters culturally appropriate every possible role in human civilization. Monk, ninja, thief, king, painter. You know, all the roles.
Yeah.
What happened to the good old days when characters with black hair were the heroes? Japan will change its social conditioning scheme sometime in the future. 0 out of 2 users found that helpful.
Yeah. But if it's any comfort to that person, this guesser found it semi-helpful.
Okay,
so now I understand it was ported to mobile touch controls. Okay, but it's not. But it's a Japanese developed game. Are we talking about? Oh my goodness. The developer I know who ported a ton of stuff to mobile is Square Enix.
Okay.
I'm thinking this is a Square game, and is this Final Fantasy 9?
It's not Final Fantasy 9.
Okay. All right. Am I warm?
You're not a million miles off.
Okay.
If you want the pitch again with all this new information, I don't know. What would be useful?
Yeah. Read it to me one last time, and then I'll take my final guess.
Okay. Learn from the past. Many centuries have passed since the War of the Redacted. Civilizations have been rebuilt with iron, machines, and technology. But the forces of Redacted have begun to return, and when an ancient Redacted is discovered, the risk of war resurfaces. Discover the origins of Special Redacted, later developed in the subsequent Redacted, including Redacted, mini-quests, the Redacted battle system, and much more. Numerous weapons, items, Redacted, and special skills allow for incredible gameplay depth and strategy. Rereading that myself, there's another game that this fits exactly into, so...
Okay, all right. My mind is thinking this is so it's a game about Japan or Japanese culture or maybe history in some way. There's a lot of blonde people in it, which makes me feel very JRPG. Especially playing roles that maybe it's not appropriate for. Okay, my last hint that I'm going to ask for. Is this a game that we have referenced you son of a... All right. Is this a game that we have referenced in recent history of this show? This is like a hack.
Probably not. I'm going to say no.
Okay, because that for me, I was kind of in the mindset of like Jade Empire.
Okay.
But I'm not saying Jade Empire. I'm saying something Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic?
No.
I'm trying to think of long RPGs made by... Oh, no, that's not Japanese developed, so that would have taken that off the table. Okay. I didn't get it.
I'll read the pitch unredacted now, see if it comes back. Although, again, as I said, this is also the almost exact story of Final Fantasy VII, which it's not. So
yeah. I mean, I was in Final Fantasy land for a while.
All right, so learn from the past. Many centuries have passed since the War of the Magi. Civilizations have been rebuilt with iron machines and technology, but the forces of magic have begun to return. And when an ancient Esper is discovered, the risk of war resurfaces. Featuring all new CG cinematics. Oh, actually, I cut this line out because it only refers to the iPhone re-release.
Okay.
Discover the origins of special features later developed in the subsequent Final Fantasy series, including summoning magic, mini quests, the active time battle system, and much more. Numerous weapons, items, magic spells, and special skills allow for incredible gameplay depth and strategy.
Is this Final Fantasy 3? 2,
kind of?
7, whatever the...
This is Final Fantasy VI, which was released as Final Fantasy 3 in America. So, but yeah, again, reading that again, that is almost the exact same story as Final Fantasy 7. So.
Yeah, I guess they double dipped a little bit. Yeah, I was thinking about that Final Fantasy, but I went to kind of 9 because I didn't realize, maybe I just didn't put together that they had gone that far back in their ports, but I know they did like the 3D ones, all for mobile. So Final Fantasy 6-3. Certainly our fellow Canon rinsers would say 6.
Anyways, wow, sorry for the stumper on that one, but you were very close. You did a good job of getting within the right series and then jettisoning to a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah. If I should have well remembered my non-Japanese
all those blonde characters in Star Wars stealing the spotlight from the real Asian heroes of the Star Wars universe.
Well, what I was thinking about with the Star Wars game is that Star Wars is always about like there was an old war, we're about to go to war. Sub in like magic for Sith or Force in that statement, and you actually come pretty close to a Star Wars pitch as well.
It's true. That probably says a lot about originality of ideas, but we'll leave you all to ruminate on that for another week. We'll catch you again next time. Thanks for listening.
Bye.